Deputy Ewan Murphy, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to both the witnesses. You're both very welcome. Mr. Parlin, just a couple of quick questions to clarify. Is membership of the CIF mandatory?
No, absolutely. It's entirely voluntary.
And is there a subscription fee for membership?
Is there a subscription fee? Yes. Subscription fee is based upon the turnover of the company.
Okay. And would you describe the CIF as a form of self-regulator for the industry or as a watchdog for its interests?
Well, no, I think it's just a representative group. We are involved with government recently and with the Department of Environment in setting up, which we've set up a voluntary register now that would register construction companies and would give some credibility to the public when they're engaging a construction company that they have experience, that they're tax compliant, that they have their health and safety standards, their insurance, and all of the other elements, which unfortunately wasn't the case. Anybody and everybody choose to be builders and developers when things were going very, very well.
You both said in your opening statements that the level of activity...
We just clarify, in terms of membership, we have our Dublin branch meeting, we have our associations, and we have our regional branch meetings. And when somebody applies to be a member, it has to be passed by whatever either association or branch. Around a table of people attending a meeting, an application is made by Tom Parra Construction Limited, and the members would have a discussion as to, were they an upstanding company, did they have experience, and so on. And that would have that was the method of clearing membership.
You both say in your opening statement that the level of activity in the construction industry reached unsustainable levels during the boom years. Mr. Kelleher, does the CIF bear responsibility for that?
The CIF was one of the players in that scene. You've got to look at what was causing the rise in construction activity. I said in my statement that the pressures that I felt were all to increase supply, and those pressures were coming right across the board. They were coming from a broad range of the political spectrum, all parties. The belief was that we were trying to catch up on a substantial infrastructural deficit which had accumulated over many decades. The economy was growing rapidly, population expanding, inward investment strong, all of the indicators looking very good. So there was a very ambitious series of national development plans. You couple that then with the rising population and social changes, which meant that what had been a very high number of people per house in Ireland by European standards was gradually moving towards the European norm. It hasn't reached it yet, incidentally, but overall we bear a responsibility, but I think we were one of many players seeing an optimistic expanding scenario for Ireland in which a wide number of people shared.
Thank you. Mr. Keller, did the CIF have in place a protocol for its members on financial contributions to political parties?
I'm not sure that we had a protocol. All I can say is, for the CIF itself, we never made a political contribution. I'm sure individual members may or may not have, but that was a matter for individual members. Absolutely, the CIF was not involved in political contributions.
A protocol at all for members on giving gifts to political parties or individual TDs?
Not that I'm aware of.
Why weren't there protocols in place?
Why would there be protocols in place? Does any other representative body have protocols in place? Perhaps there should be protocols in place. Perhaps there are now.
Well, Mr. Parlin, are there protocols in place now in the CIF?
No, but I think we all know now that all political donations are all, in the public arena. They're on a register. They're there for everyone to see. But no, we didn't have any interference with members, or still haven't had.
So, Mr. Keller, just to clarify, the CIF itself never donated to a political party or individual?
CIF itself never donated to a political party. To my knowledge, no. But if you want to try and specify a type of gift or something, I could relate that. I could be more positive in my answer.
Well, say corporate hospitality, tickets to a match, a bottle of wine, that kind of thing.
Not in my time.
Mr. Parlin?
So we don't have any we don't have any corporate hospitality within the CIF. Individual members may have had done, but certainly not the CIF. We don't have any seats. We don't have any tickets. We don't have anything.
And the giving of gifts to TDs or political parties?
No. I think there was a case where a member sent out a bottle of drink at Christmas time to some people as a result of some people who had engaged with us recently in my time, and in some cases they were returned.
Once off.
Absolutely. And learn from that experience as well.
But the CIF lobbies on behalf of its members.
Yes, it did, yes.
Are members free to lobby independently of the CIF?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Any company is free to lobby. I'm not talking just about the construction industry here, but that's the nature of the, that's an entitlement of any company.
Okay. And given the fact that lobbying is taking place by the CIF and by members of the CIF, you still did not think it was appropriate to have a protocol in place in relation to the giving of political donations? Does the CIF ever draw a correlation between the giving of political donations or financial contributions and lobbying for certain changes to tax laws, for example?
The activity of any individual member is in that area. It's a matter for a company. It's not a matter for the CIF. The CIF as an organisation was nowhere near that, was not in any way involved in giving donations. It just wasn't an issue for us as a membership organisation.
Okay. Have you seen Dr. Elaine Byrne's research? It's in the booklets that you were provided with, page 106 to 107 in the first volume. And in it she states that between 1997 and 2007, 35% of Fianna Fáil's disclosed donations were from property and construction interests, and 34% of the PD's disclosed donations came from the property sector. Mr. Kelleher, why was your industry such a significant donor to the main political parties of government at the time?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. I was looking.
Why was your industry such a significant donor to the main political parties of government at the time?
I don't know the answer. I can only answer for the organisation that I ran, and that was the organisation of members. The activities of individual members are a matter for individual members. I can only take responsibility for the organisation that I was the Director General of.
Would you have been aware at the time of these donations taking place?
No.
Mr. Parlin, would you be aware as in your current role?
Well, certainly lately there's been little or no donations, and I think they haven't been sought. But I think that time, and I read Elaine's report, and clearly it researched quite accurately through the contributions that were put on the record. It probably illustrated that that's where the money appeared to be at the time. Political parties clearly sought donations as well. I have some experience of running an election campaign. It's a very expensive business. So builders and developers, and we need to make a distinction here. The CIF represents the builders. We did have some builder-stroke developers, but there were a lot of big developers out there, and investors, and some recently very high-profile people that had no experience in building, that had invested over $1 billion in property around the world, and were part of the whole problem that we have. But certainly, they were a target, I'm sure, for political parties as well. They probably had their own original. Back in the day when I was running for election in 2002 in Laois Offaly, you were either Fine Gael or you were Fianna Fáil. There wasn't too many other parties around at the time. And people that would have been in business at that time were one way or the other. And I'm sure they were approached and made their contributions.
Mr. Kelleher, do you see any relationship between these donations and the level of donations and decisions taken by the government that would favour the industry by way of tax reliefs or incentives?
No way. We would make our budget submission each year. We would put forward what we felt were, having listened to members, and the members would have been involved in drawing up a budget submission. We would have made that submission. It would have covered taxation areas and taxation issues important to the members, and we would have sought to fit in the submission with what we knew to be government priorities of the day, be it the National Spatial Strategy or the investment in gateways or whatever it might be. And that would be the nature of it.
Well, let's look at your budget submission then from 2001, which is in the documentation as well. where's the reference? CIF page 18183. Mr. Bacon was before the committee, Mr. Kelleher, and in 2001 we saw that a number of measures designed by Mr. Bacon to calm the rising house prices were reversed by the government. Stamp duty for investors was cut and the tax on second homes was eliminated, and Mr. Bacon said that this reversal of policy was too early. And an Irish Times article from the 6th of December 2001 by Colm Keena suggested that the decision on stamp duty was made by the then Finance Minister Charlie McCreevy against official advice and after intensive lobbying by interested parties. And your budget documentation on page 183 shows the CIF lobbying for these changes. You said earlier that you were under pressure to increase output at the time, but
Yes.
Is this not an example of the CIF lobbying to change what the government intended to do in relation to the property sector?
But, at budget time, there are 200 or 300 submissions from representative bodies, from interest groups, from trade unions, that go into the Department of Finance, that go to the Minister for Finance. Every one of them is looking for some sort of something extra in the budget for their particular group. That's the nature of the democracy. The department, the minister, the officials, they weigh up the submissions. They have a view on policy. They develop policy and they implement budgetary policy.
And the evidence for the submission, where does it come from?
The evidence of...
For the submission that you made in 2001, or any budget submission, where does the evidence come from for proposing those changes?
Where we were seeking changes. I think you've got to think back to what the environment was like in the 2001-2002 period. I think I said earlier, and there's a piece of correspondence in the core documents that I had with Minister McCreevy at the time, that we were concerned that post-2000 there would be a squeezing of capital investment relative to capital expenditure relative to current expenditure after structural and cohesion funds started to taper down. Then you had 9/11. I think you had foot and mouth disease around the same time. You certainly had a very sharp deterioration in global and Irish economic conditions for a period. It wasn't all a roller coaster ride upwards. There were periods of softness and drop, and inward investment post 9/11 had dried up pretty significantly. So I would say the policy environment at that time was very different from when Peter Bacon had made his recommendations, and that, hopefully, and that's what we would have wished for, that the government of the day, the minister of the day, would have adjusted policy in this area to help the construction industry. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. My time is limited, so I've got to move on to another area. Mr. Parlin, just in relation to NAMA, if I may. You stated in your opening statement that the banking was not a feature of the CIF's activities pre-2008. And you commissioned a report then from the Lombard Street Research, which was critical of NAMA. This is in the core document, page 7. Where did the funding for this report come from, to commission this report?
We raised some extra funding. Probably the impression and this discussion has all been about house building and about developing. But that's it's a minuscule part, as you can imagine, of CIF now. It probably only makes up 5% of the total activity within CIF. At the peak in 1996, when we built, or in 2006 rather, when we built over 90,000 houses, even then it was about half of the total construction output. So within the CIF, the main contractors, the electrical contractors, they would have a big input and probably a lot of concern that the focus entirely within CIF was on house building and development, and as a result of the overbuild in that area, bringing difficulties for the industry, for the country, and for workers, and so on. So when concerns were raised, the Irish House Builders, the IHF, the Irish House Builders Association, are a constituent organisation within the CIF. They had their concerns in the lead up to the establishment of NAMA. They sought the support of the CIF as the overall organisation and said, look, we're majorly concerned here. We didn't invest in legal challenges or anything. We invested in an external financial consultancy group from London, and we sought to raise funds amongst the builders themselves, because it was fairly likely when things were going downhill that a main contractor that had no involvement in, or wasn't going to have an involvement in NAMA. So we sought an extra voluntary subscription from members.
Subcommittee set up within the CIF.
That's right, yeah.
And its purpose was to...
Well, I suppose to investigate what the likely implications of NAMA were going to be for the industry.
And there was a fee for being a part of this subcommittee to
No,
pay for
it
the
wasn't a
research?
fee, but we sought voluntary extra subscriptions to fund any expenses that
What
committee
level of
had.
subscription
I think we sought either 1,000 or 2,000.
per member of the committee?
No, I think we sent out quite a lot of members, or letters, as you can imagine, and we raised, I think, about 100,000, which was near enough to what the
Moving on,
report
Deputy
cost
Colonel.
us.
Okay.